Welcome to Financial Date Night with Ashley Edwards. Today we are talking about donor advised funds. Is this a term that you've heard of before?
It is not.
Okay, great. So we're going to abbreviate it for today as DAFs. Okay. And what a donor advised fund is essentially a way to give, but also save on taxes, which we love, plan our impact, and really just be more intentional about giving, right? The traditional way that people do this is through nonprofit entities, right? They'll do a public charity or a private foundation, but there's actually other vehicles that the wealthy are using, such as DAFs. Okay, so we're going to talk about what that is. Active, I don't need you interrupting me, okay? If you want to be in the audience, then you need to sit down. Okay, now. So tonight is more about learning what it is and how it works. It's not to make a decision. It's really to think about, okay, what is this? Is this something that we can incorporate into our lives or that we want to incorporate into our lives, given where we're headed and what our goals are, right? Okay, so why are we even talking about this? Now, we already give. So the crazy thing is, you have a nonprofit, I have a nonprofit. We are sitting on each other's boards, right? So we both have public charity nonprofits, right? Not private foundations, but public charities. And the question is, do we want a smarter system for our giving? Because clearly we both care about giving a lot. Like, we created nonprofits before we even created businesses, so clearly that was essential and a core value for us. But is there a better way to go about this? Like, is there a structure that works as hard on our money and for our money, just like all of our other structures do in our lives, right? And so we are aligned that we both care about impact. So there's no question there. We both care about community, and we want our giving to reflect our intentions, right? Not just randomly giving or giving on impulse, which we've set up systems for that. We both have complex income. Right? We have W-2 earnings, we have rental income, we have business revenue, we have investments in the stock market, lots of different types of income. So our financial picture is very layered. We both run nonprofits, as I mentioned, and we may want to think about how to better organize our giving, right? So right now, our giving feels very reactive. Like, we are attempting to juggle a job and a nonprofit and a business and, being a husband, being a wife, and soon being a parent, right? So maybe a DAF could help us be more planned and purposeful and aligned in our wealth building strategy, right? Maybe it has a role in that. And so, question, do you want your giving to feel more planned and less random or scattered? Or do you feel like the way you give and how it's structured right now is actually okay?
No, it is not okay. I give time more than I do give money,
Mm-hmm.
but I do want to be more organized in giving money,
Mm.
right? And I
Yeah.
think because we have nonprofits, because we are on boards with nonprofits, part of me is like, I'm doing enough, but I would like to still give in a way that is. All
Right.
right. So to answer your question,
Mm-hmm.
do I want to make my giving more structured?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. We give our time a lot, whether it's on our own nonprofit boards or the nonprofit boards that we're a part of. But I do want to structure how I give financially.
Yeah.
Because I know that there are benefits that can help us, but then of course, benefits for whatever we're giving, whatever effort we are trying to support. But yeah, it's not organized in any manner.
Yeah.
I've never tracked my donations when doing taxes, never, because I might give here and there, but I don't keep receipts. I don't do it. So, and it's never enough for me to feel like I need to track this. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I want to be more intentional with that.
Okay. And
Mm-hmm.
even just from the actual giving aspect of it, like how the organization is structured and what kinds of programs are involved and how much time you're giving, we are on nonprofit boards, and they're essentially working boards as opposed to just governing boards, which means we are putting sweat equity into actually running the nonprofit, but also serving as board members. And there may be a better way. Okay. So that's what we're going to explore too.
All right, let's do it.
So, a donor advised fund is a giving account held at a public charity. And the public charity that it's held at is called the sponsor. What we do is we contribute money or assets into the account, and in return, we receive a tax deduction. And then we use that money to recommend grants to charities over time at our own pace. Think of it as more of a charity bucket. So we fill that bucket first, and then we thoughtfully direct where the water flows out of that bucket. Okay, meaning the water being the money and the bucket being the donor advised fund. So a donor advised fund lets us separate when we get the tax deduction from when we actually send the money to the causes, which is a powerful tool. I don't know why this started acting crazy.
Time, right?
Yeah, that's so weird.
You can still see your computer is up?
Yeah, it looks like you just disconnected from the screen. Yeah, now it's saying it could not connect. Oh.
The TV's not off or anything, right?
That's weird. Did it like fall asleep or something?
I don't know. Come on, bro.
This is from where I screen shared, but it just says loading right now. Okay, let me try again. Strange. All right. Okay. So how the flow works. First, we contribute to the fund. We fund it with cash or assets. We deduct. We get a tax deduction, which happens at contribution. And then the funds can grow tax-free inside the account. And we can recommend grants to causes on our own timeline. So it's less of an operating nonprofit, kind of like what we do now, where we hold programs and fundraisers, and more of we are a granting institution, funding other people doing that sweat equity, but still in supporting causes that we care about, right? Okay, so the process is straightforward. You choose a sponsor, and then you open an account. Now, once you open the account, then you can decide what kind of assets you want to contribute. It doesn't have to be cash. It could be real estate. It could be a lot of other things. It could be crypto, but we'll get into that. You get the tax deduction, which is the most important part, I must say. Giving is important, okay? But we're already doing that. The real kicker here is the tax deduction. And then you can recommend grants, right? So each step is designed to give us flexibility in how we give and how we want to make an impact, but without the complexity of running an actual public charity nonprofit, which is what we're doing now. And so the sponsor, which is the sponsoring charity, actually handles the administrative burden. And we are just focused on directing the funds, right? So we can say, look, I only want to fund cancer research. So find cancer research organizations, and I'll tell you which ones I'm interested in. You have a question?
Yeah. So when choosing a sponsor, are we talking like Fidelity, or is it a bank? Or
no, it's a public charity. It's a nonprofit.
Oh, so choosing a sponsor would be a nonprofit organization.
Yeah.
And then opening the account through the nonprofit.
Yeah.
And then, what's the difference between choosing the nonprofit, opening the account, contributing? So then that nonprofit sends money to other nonprofits through the grant process?
From our fund. So they have to, we are the donors, right? And we advise the nonprofit on how to distribute the funds.
Okay.
But they're essentially like the holder of the funds. And we'll get more into like what kind of powers they have and what are the limitations of this structure. But just for now, that's the simple of how it works.
Okay.
Yeah. So why do people love these? So these have become very popular, especially among the ultra wealthy, especially in America. And even in other countries, like when I was looking at purchasing in Dubai in my retirement account, I met with a consultant and they actually said, well, have you thought about purchasing through a donor advised fund? I said, no. It's not something I've thought about actually. I barely knew what a donor advised fund was, but clearly it's something that, people with a lot of wealth talk about and know about. The reason it's so popular is because it combines tax efficiency with simplicity of giving. And it makes it easy for high income households to make an impact without giving up the most important asset, which really is time, not money, right? Mm-hmm. So you even said like you're giving a lot of time to your nonprofit, and that is literally the commodity we can't get more of. Mm-hmm. You have what you have, right? And you don't usually know how much you have left. So that's the most important one. It's easy to start. A lot of sponsors will let you open a donor advised fund with $5,000 to $10,000. Mm-hmm. The ultra wealthy more often than not open it with a lot more. We're not there yet, but we're on our way. The setup is simple. It's actually easier than creating a private foundation, which you have done on accident before. You remember? You wanted to open a public charity, but ended up opening a private foundation. Yeah. It's good for family legacy. So you can involve many family members over time, and it can create a shared giving culture across generations. Mm-hmm. It can grow tax-free, right? The funds inside the donor advised fund actually can be invested and grow tax-free, meaning more money will reach the causes we care about without us having to necessarily contribute more money. Mm. It also has flexible timing. So you can leverage a donor advised fund during your high income years to offset some of that income, even though you don't have to make those grants during that year. So let's say next year you're like, oh my gosh, I'm about to have a big financial event. Mm-hmm. Maybe you're going to sell a business and it's valued at $2 billion. And you're like, oh my God, the taxes on this are about to destroy me. That would be a year where you may want to put more into the donor advised fund because you're going to have this big exit. Mm-hmm. That's how the ultra wealthy are using this, even though they don't have to distribute those funds that year.
This kind of reminds me a little bit of like a retirement account, but for donations, or a HSA, but for donations. Putting money into an account that can only be used for a specific purpose. Like an HSA is for health care. You put money in it, you can invest it if you want to, it can grow, but taking the money out can only be used for a specific purpose. So with a donor advised fund, as you're reading through this, it's like the only difference I'm seeing is money goes in. Well, the only difference I'm seeing is what you can spend it on, which is charitable donations. But yeah, I mean, it sounds very similar to that. Is that, I mean, I don't know, am I missing, do I kind of have it right, or maybe a little bit, or it's a little bit different?
I don't have the tax expertise to say like all the ways that they may be similar.
I see.
I can see a similarity in the sense that you are restricted in how you use the funds. Mm-hmm. Like for retirement, you have to use it for retirement. But outside of that, I don't know what other similarities there are. I mean, I know you can make tax deductions on certain retirement contributions, but not all retirement contributions.
Yeah.
You can also make deductions on charitable donations. This is just a different vehicle with better tax advantages.
Yeah.
So I don't know enough about the tax code to say how similar they are.
Yeah.
But that's what advisors are for.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So what can go into a donor advised fund? So most people assume that it's just cash, but that's actually not true. A lot of sponsors accept a wide range of assets, which could be really meaningful as investors and business owners. So some of the types of gifts a donor advised fund may accept are, of course, cash, real estate, crypto, business interests. So it could be shares of an LLC or, some other entity you own, mm-hmm. even appreciated stock to avoid capital gains, right? So there's a lot of different ways that it can be structured. Now, for us, our financial picture is very diverse, and that creates real opportunity for us. So we have, like we talked about, those different layers of income: W-2, business ownership, investment portfolio, real estate. And so it's worth exploring, what can be used to provide a tax advantage. Because if you really look at your tax burden, mm-hmm. like every time I get my W-2, I'm like,
wild.
What happened? Like it actually blows me away. But anyway, another story for another day.
Mm-hmm.
But each sponsor has their own review process, so not non-cash assets aren't guaranteed, but you'd have to talk to that sponsor before deciding on how to do that. But this is something we'd most likely start with cash, but work with a tax strategist and a CPA and probably a wealth advisor to be more strategic about what we deploy into this donor advised fund. I've even talked with my own financial advisor in one of our meetings about donor advised funds. And the instruction that I received was, look, I want to put this on your radar. It's not something we're going to look at right now, but pretty soon is something that we're probably going to look at. And that is actually what intrigued me about this topic. It was the tax deductions, which let's talk about these tax deductions. Okay. But before that, so appreciated assets. What people like is appreciation, but what they don't like is capital gains, right?
Mm-hmm.
So for investors, this is where a donor advised fund stops just being a giving account and becomes more of a strategy that you can deploy. So without a donor advised fund, how it usually works is your asset appreciates and you sell it, and then you pay capital gains tax, and then you donate what's left, right? If you decide to donate.
Mm-hmm.
And so the charitable impact is not only smaller because you had less to work with after you paid taxes, but also you had to pay taxes, which sucks, right? Yeah. I mean, paying some taxes is fine, but if we could have any control over it, we would prefer to put our money towards causes we care about than always paying taxes, right? And of course, there's an exception with real estate. We have 1031 exchanges and things like that. But if you are prioritizing impact, it doesn't have the same effect, right? You can do a 1031 exchange with your real estate that is appreciated, but that doesn't help a cause that you care about. Mm-hmm. But with a donor advised fund, it does. Now, with the donor advised fund, this situation can look a little different. So you can contribute that appreciated asset directly to the donor advised fund, providing your sponsor allows you to do that. Avoid capital gains altogether. Deduct the full fair market value, which is crazy. And then you can have an even bigger charitable impact, right? Yeah. It's insane. So when the asset has gone up significantly in value, contributing it to the donor advised fund instead of selling it actually allows you to avoid paying capital gains on the gain, but you can still receive a deduction based on the full market value at the time of contribution. Mm-hmm. That's crazy. Yeah. I don't know any other vehicle that allows you to do that, right? I know ones that allow you to defer taxes, but not ones that allow you to just kind of completely bypass that whole process, right? And so, of course, this is a talk to our CPA, tax strategist, wealth advisor first type of situation, mm-hmm. because the rules are nuanced and what a sponsor will and will not accept varies. But it's just something to think about. So what is the tax benefit, right? So when you contribute to a donor advised fund, the deduction is treated as a gift to a public charity. Okay. Now that generally means you have more favorable limits on what you can deduct than if you were donating to a private foundation or just a regular public charity. Right. So for cash gifts, you can deduct up to 60% of your adjusted gross income to a DAF. 60%.
So 60. So say you contribute $100.
Yep.
You can deduct $60.
Correct. Yeah. Other assets, you can deduct up to 50% of the adjusted gross income for, appreciated assets. And then for a private foundation, in comparison, you can usually deduct 30% of your adjusted gross income.
I've seen that.
Yeah. So as you can see, there are much better benefits with a donor advised fund than with a traditional charity. Yeah. So for us, we are both strong W-2 earners at this time, making well over $200,000 each, which in this country is actually a lot. I know it doesn't feel like a lot because we live in California, mm-hmm. but in the grand scheme of things, it's a lot of money, technically, which is why we don't see a good amount of it because it's going to taxes. Right. So in years where our income spikes, right, because we talked about having different sources of income, right? W-2 income, real estate income, but also a lot of losses, right? A lot of tax liability, a lot of losses, even though it looks on paper like a lot of income. If we have those years where we know it's going to be a high income year, this is something that we can leverage to take a larger deduction and keep more of our money and put it towards causes we care about.
Yeah.
If we don't like how the government is spending money, we can direct our money elsewhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I think I hear that complaint all the time, like, oh my God, I paid this in taxes and these roads still blah, blah, blah. Well, maybe you use a vehicle like this and you don't worry about the roads. Maybe you can go, you know, donate to your favorite,
Right.
I don't know, animal, whatever, you know, like whatever you care about.
Yeah.
Yes, your favorite cat charity. I don't know, you know. So the deduction timing and the grant timing become independent decisions, right? Which is also really helpful because you can really plan for when you're going to be making those contributions and taking those deductions.
And you're able to do it across years. I can donate this year and take the deduction in 2030 if I wanted to. Or is there a...
No, you take the deduction at the time of donation.
Oh,
but
okay.
you don't have to make the grant until whenever.
Okay.
Like you don't have to
like distribute the money to...
Yeah. So
okay.
with I don't know if you know, but with private foundations and public charities, there are certain rules as to like how much of their funds, I think it's specifically with private foundations,
Mm-hmm.
they have to spend a certain amount of their money per year to qualify as that organization. With this, you can donate the money in 2020 and decide you want to give those, you're going to take that deduction in 2020, but you want to give those grants in 2026, you know? So that's the cool thing about it. What do you think would count as a high income year? Like a bonus, a sale, a strong business quarter? Like what do you think in terms of planning would be a high income year?
I think that when you say a sale, you mean like a home sale or like a
business?
business?
A real estate sale.
Any sale would be a big year.
Yeah.
At least as our businesses are growing. Maybe the strong business quarter will come, but right now I think that what will qualify for a big year is some type of large sale because that would be a huge influx.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. I think also any event that's going to push us into the next tax bracket. Mm-hmm. I'm constantly looking at like, ooh, how close am I going to be this year?
Yeah.
Like I ain't trying to be all the way over there and take home less of my money. Like that's not the goal. And so just constantly monitoring that. And a lot of the ultra wealthy will look at the final quarter and be like, okay, what are we looking at? You know, asking their tax advisors, do we need to make a big donation? I have literally talked to people, millionaires, billionaires, who are like, yeah, you know, I had to give 200,000 so that I could reduce my tax liability. And I'm like, dang.
Give 200,000.
Yeah, giving 6 figures to avoid paying 6 figures in tax. I mean, look, it's like pick your poison. You want to contribute to charity, or you want to contribute to your country. Like you can make that choice, right? There's vehicles for that. Mm-hmm. So a donor advised fund shines the brightest in years where the income is elevated, right? And that's usually something you can kind of predict and see over time. Which allows you to bunch your giving into a single large deduction from a tax perspective while spreading your grants to nonprofits out over time. It's excellent, right? So we talked about a year where there's a sale that happens. I talked about a year where anything that happens that's going to shift me into the next tax bracket. Like those are practical examples of times where we may, if we have a donor advised fund, we may sit down and say, okay, the numbers are looking great. Praise God. Yeah. And also, maybe this is a great year to donate 100,000 to the church, you know, or whatever. You're like whatever cause you want to donate to, you know, and it allows you to front load that giving instead of being reactive from a tax perspective. Do we still control the money? So the mindset shift here is that there are certain things you can and cannot do with a donor advised fund, right? So what we can do, we can recommend grants to qualified charities. We can suggest how funds are invested inside the account. We can name successors or advisors for the account. We can grant or make those grants at any pace this year, next year, 10 years, 15 years from now. What we cannot do, we cannot take the money back and use it for ourselves, okay? That's
So
one
once
big.
it's in.
That's the big distinction from a retirement account. That money is for you, for future you.
Yeah.
This money will never be for you.
Yeah.
Ever.
Except for the tax stuff.
Except for the tax benefit,
Yeah.
right? Now, you also cannot guarantee that every recommendation to your sponsor is followed. Now, I have my own ideas about how to deal with this that I'm not going to talk about on camera, but we can talk about it behind the scenes, okay? I feel like if I'm choosing a sponsor and I'm making a recommendation, I could wiggle my way into what I want, okay? And we can talk about how to do that.
Okay.
But for these purposes, you cannot guarantee that every recommendation you make is followed, right?
Yeah.
You also cannot direct funds to individuals or non-qualified entities.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't tell the sponsor, like, hey, give my cousin a grant for college, or hey, give this LLC
that doesn't have a 501c3
right.
status.
You
money.
cannot do
Yeah.
that.
Okay.
Yeah. You also cannot treat the account as a family savings vehicle. This can be part of a family office strategy, but it is not money for your family to use for their personal expenses.
Gotcha.
And personal desires. So it gives you a voice. It's not necessarily full ownership the way that a private foundation, well, even that is not really full ownership because you have a board of directors and you don't, I mean, with any of these, you don't really have full control, even though some people improperly operate them in a way that exercises full control, but they're not designed to be used that way. So when the money goes in, it's permanently charitable. And that's the deal, right? You cannot take it back. Yeah, you invest in it. Yeah, you watching it grow, but it's growing for the benefit of charity, not for you.
Nice. Okay.
Are you comfortable with that?
Oh yeah, irreversible. I got you. Yeah. Once it's in, it's in.
It's in. It's in.
Ain't no backsies.
That's right. It's an irreversible commitment.
Gotcha.
So it's not a savings account. It's not a family fund. You only contribute what you are really ready to permanently part with. Okay. Now the downsides. So we talked about these, but you can't attach strings to certain gifts. You can't say, look, I want this to go to this specific charity or else, right? You can't make those kinds of threats or anything like that. It's the control is really with the sponsor, right? Again, so no guarantees here. You can make recommendations, but it's not binding. The legal control rests with the sponsor. And this is why choosing a sponsor is critical, right? Which sponsor you choose is going to be very important. Asset liquidation. So one of the downsides is when there are non-cash assets like stock or real estate, the sponsors typically liquidate these and keep the money in the fund. And you can't require the sponsor to hold that asset. If you give a 400 unit building to the donor advised fund, they don't have to deal with that. They can say, we're going to sell this mofo and keep this cash in this fund, right? You also are not making a commitment that is revocable. This is a permanent charitable commitment.
Yeah.
So no reversing course once the assets are contributed. Even if it's like real estate, you can't now go and change title or anything like that. You have already disposed of that asset and it now belongs to the donor advised fund run by that sponsor. Okay.
Do we, when choosing a sponsor, besides thinking about how the sponsor will, or how the sponsor can be on the same page as you, are there other factors? Like, do they have fees with certain sponsors, or
that's a good question. I'm actually not sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that is something that we should investigate and find out.
Okay.
I doubt it though. Yeah. But I don't know. Question. So do we care more about flexibility or controlling every single gift closely? Because I think if we care more about control, this may be less of something that's for us. But if we care more about like preserving our time and having a bigger impact, but also tax liability, I think it may make more sense.
Yeah. I think less about control. We control other things. This is a decision to relinquish control, essentially. So yeah.
Okay. Just a quick comparison. So each of these types of vehicles, so donor advised fund, direct giving versus a private foundation, they have different pros and cons. We touched on some of them, but I think a donor advised fund is kind of in the middle. But the two things that appeal to me most about the donor advised funds are the tax advantages and the time freedom. Because if I can make a contribution and know that it's having the impact that I want, I can feel good about that. But knowing that I can also be doing what I want to do with my time. With the nonprofits we operate now, it's a lot of planning and event hosting and fundraising, and it's a lot of operations and admin. And as I get older and, prioritize other things such as being a mom, being a wife, I don't know that I'm going to want to do any of that. I may want to just throw money at things.
Yeah.
So those are the main two advantages I see. But again, like you said, it's a conscious decision to give up some of that control.
Yeah. Gotcha. So,
yeah.
I was just going to say, because I see that you have no admin fees under the direct giving. That makes me think that there might be fees associated with the fund.
Yeah. Maybe. Yeah, you can find out. It may depend on the sponsor too.
Right, that's what I mean. Yeah. Like because they're managing it essentially, and that makes me think like a mutual fund.
But if they're investing it properly,
the fees they're negligent.
Yeah, the fees could be.
But I mean, it's not money that you're making; it's money that you're going to donate. But I get what you're saying.
Yeah. So how could this fit into our lives? So we are already investors. So when we think about assets, timing, leverage, and long-term strategy, this is something that could allow us to bring that same level of business acumen and investing knowledge into our charitable giving. So thinking about other conversations we've had, like setting up a family office, like these are really strategies to move from being reactive to being more structured and intentional just in all areas of our lives, especially for this topic, our financial lives. And so working with an advisor, a tax strategist to see like, is this something that could fit into our lives? And if so, at what point in time? And then if so, thinking about what kinds of causes we would want to support, right? So right now I'm really supportive of literacy. That's something I'm really passionate about. You're really passionate about cybersecurity education and access. And we're both in some sense compassionate about community development, right? Just making sure that our people have the information and access and knowledge that they need to get to the next level. So having something like a donor advised fund allows you to make an impact across topics and not have to have an organization for every single thing, right? Because with most nonprofits, you can't say like, yeah, we support breast cancer and literacy and cybersecurity and like, no. It's usually mission driven and it's a singular focus. But this allows you to have that diversity and to bring our charitable interests together. And then over time, just thinking from a legacy perspective, we have children that have particular charitable interests that we can incorporate that in too, right? We can make those recommendations. So some questions we should ask before we open a donor advised fund. And of course, we're not making a decision tonight, but just these are food for thought. So one is, what is our primary goal? Like, are we looking for tax savings, easier giving, family legacy, all three? And then another question is, how much do we actually want to give annually? I very much track the money that I give because I very much itemize my taxes, okay? And I write off down to the cent, okay? So thinking about how much I want to give annually is an easy one for me. And then thinking about how that scales over direct giving, right? Because right now I give directly. I don't know what they're doing with that money or how it's growing. If I'm giving to a fund and I know that fund's being invested, I know that the money that I'm giving is actually being cultivated and it can make even a bigger impact when I'm ready to make or to deploy it or make a grant. Another one is one joint donor advised fund or separate donor advised funds. Would shared ownership strengthen our giving plan? I would assume yes. And then how much simplicity versus how much control? Like, are we optimizing for ease of giving? or are we looking more for precision? And I think I know the answer to that. And then questions for our CPA and other advisors. So, what would be the best asset to contribute first, right? Or in what tax year would a donor advised fund help us the most? Even though we file our taxes separately, there still may be something strategic that we can do. Which sponsors accept more complex assets like real estate or business interests or crypto, right? I logged into Coinbase the other day and remembered that I had crypto. I said, oh, that's crazy. Insane. Like, get your life together. And then how does a donor advised fund interact with our existing nonprofit involvement, right? So are those entities that we would need to wind down, or, like, how does that fit in? So those are questions that we would ask our advisors. And my honest take is that I think a donor advised fund feels worth exploring. And I am very much biased because my own advisor told me to explore it. Yeah. So like they already know my situation and they're thinking about that. I think it's a strong fit just from a time perspective, but also to reduce the complexity. Like I have a nonprofit, but I'm not running it very well. Like I'm doing the things, I'm compliant, I'm maintaining, I'm fundraising, but it's very like the impact is not as big as it could be, right? Yeah. I could easily put that money into another nonprofit that actually has the bandwidth and time to make an impact. And then I have here before a foundation. We don't currently have a foundation, but I have thought about having a foundation for very specific things, right? I have thought about having a foundation for business starting, like giving women like a grant to start a business, and then having programming to help them do that the right way, right? And so this could be a way to have that impact, but not do that work. And then thinking about if it's the right tool and at the right stage. So we're still building and we don't necessarily need what's most sophisticated at this time. But as we continue to grow, we have the knowledge and resourcefulness to know what tools might fit the season that we're in. That's what this is all about, like that exposure, so that when we get to that time, we can say, you know what, I think it's time to set up a donor advised fund, right? Like at a financial date night, we may be like, you know what, I think this is something we need to explore. Right. So once we choose a clear giving rhythm and know what we actually want it for and decide on the timing, I think it can be a good vehicle for us. So suggested next steps. I think we should set our giving goals, but I think we're, in terms of how we give or what we give to, I think we know that. But in terms of the amount, I don't think we've ever discussed that. Defining if we ever did set up a donor advised fund, what would be the purpose and what would be the focus? Consulting with advisors. And this is not next steps next week. This is like over time.
I was thinking about maybe we should look into opening one tonight. Oh. So as you were talking, I started researching, and that's why I asked like who would be a cool sponsor. And Fidelity is popping up everywhere. Like Fidelity has donor advised funds. And that's what made me think about how closely it is related to HSA or a retirement account. Not the benefits of, being able to take the money out or use it for your own benefit. But it's as simple as choosing Fidelity to be your brokerage or your sponsor, opening up a donor advised fund, just like you would open up a brokerage account and set it up to where you put money in it. And then from there, and I'm like, it can start small, $50 a month or something. You know what I mean?
But you know what? If we set up a donor advised fund, I'd probably want to wind down my nonprofit. Yeah.
Okay.
So I think.
But those are two different lanes. So your donor, unless you're saying that your donor advised fund would support literacy, an organization that your nonprofit, like the same mission of your nonprofit.
Yeah. Oh, that would be the whole point. Like, because we talked about how the issue is like we're giving a lot of time, we're giving a lot of sweat equity, but we're also giving money. Yeah. Right. But we're not doing it well. And I don't know that we're going to necessarily become more available to run a nonprofit in the next 5 to 10 years. If anything, well, all these kids you want, we're going to be more busy, right? It's going to be a bunch of little bad kids running around.
These kids ain't gonna be bad.
It's
But
gonna
I
be
got
a bunch
you.
of hyper probably kids running
Yeah.
around everywhere. And I'm thinking like, am I gonna be running a nonprofit and also trying to make money to support our kids? Like, no, like let's be real here. It's just not gonna happen. So I'm trying to have that realistic view. And so if we did set up something like this sooner rather than later, I would probably wind down my nonprofit. Yeah, it would be a replacement. I'm not trying to add more onto my plate, right? I'm literally trying to be more streamlined and strategic about how I'm splitting up my time and money.
Yeah. No, I got you.
So yeah, it's thinking about like, you said, should we open with tonight? You said, I was thinking about open what tonight. I'm like, okay, do we want a giving system that grows with our wealth? And if the answer is yes, then we know how to do that. You've already started researching. I did create a quick decision filter. So green, yellow, red. So to help us decide if it's the right tool for us for charitable giving, like we can use this kind of decision filter. Green, it's a strong fit if we want easier giving. We want to plan around our taxes. We want to give over time. We don't need full control. If any of those apply, yes, green light. Proceed with caution if we're still unclear on our giving goals. We're unsure how much we want to give. We need more advice on tax timing, right? I think I'm more in this yellow.
Yeah, I think we're yellow because I don't know what I want to give to yet.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And then red, not a good fit if we want to keep full control. I have no need for that.
Yeah, I'm not in red at all.
Right. We want exact asset to go one exact charity in one exact way. I have no need for that. We are not ready for money to become permanently charitable. It's already become permanently charitable, right? So it's really just those other ones. And so for us, like where we land tonight, it sounds like you have already decided that you would like to open a donor advised fund. I think I want to open one. I think it's just more of a timing thing. Like, when do I want to do that? And the answer may be do that and wind down your nonprofit before you start busting out babies, right? Because it's just going to be more complicated when that happens. I don't know, So that's a conversation to have with my wealth manager, with my tax advisor, right? And then especially since we're so focused on business growth, it's like business growth means more money, right? Which means more taxes. So it may be a thing where it's like, oh, actually we need to set this up tomorrow, and so the bottom line is this is a powerful tool for the right people, the right couple at the right time. And our job is really to determine, like, is this the right tool for us? And if so, at what time is it the right tool? So yeah, that's all I have.
Yeah. No, this is awesome. I think that this is something that I would like to do in tandem. I mean, wait, I'm saying that right? Yeah. With me operating the nonprofit, I definitely want to keep my cyber academia open, thriving. This allows us to get the tax benefits, but also contribute financially to a different cause that doesn't have to be cybersecurity or youth education. It could be anything,
Yeah,
So,
I want to give to cancer.
Right. Leukemia has always been something that I wanted to give to or have a cause for. So yeah. Thank you. This was fantastic.
Yeah, glad you liked it. Any questions? I probably won't have many answers, but you could try.
No, I asked all my questions throughout, and you gave great answers. So yeah, we're good.
Awesome.
Appreciate you.
Thank you for joining us.
Of course.
I will see you in the next presentation, which is going to be yours, and then the month after. I have no idea what I'm going to talk about.
Yeah.
But stay tuned.
All right. And